During a heist, they locked the homeowner inside an antique trunk and forgot to call the police, leaving them to die. Now, that exact same trunk has mysteriously appeared in his apartment, and the bodies of his accomplices have already been found inside it. Every night while he sleeps, something walks him out of his bedroom, across the apartment, and tries to put him inside. Last night, he almost didn't wake up in time. Whew. I genuinely got chills just reading that back. What is up, guys? Welcome back. Tonight, I'm home alone. Heavy rain outside the window, Minecraft running in the background, and 4 stories from r/no sleep that I'm going to read to you in exactly this kind of atmosphere. Because honestly, there is no better setting for what I'm about to share with you. Get comfortable. Let's get into it. Story 1. The Trunk. First, he has to tell you about the trunk. It belonged to a middle-aged nobody they'll call Liu, who had an enormous lake house in the woods. It was Braden who told them about the house. Said it was full of antique Chinese porcelain and vases and jade and all sorts of valuables. Said the owner was a recluse who did nothing but collect precious objects and hoard them. That the house was practically a museum, but the heist was all Jess's idea, not his. None of it was his. Not that it's an excuse for what happened. He's just saying he didn't intend for any of this. Nobody did. Lou distrusted technology and feared government surveillance. No cameras, only a simple alarm system. The plan was simple. Knock on the door acting friendly. Wait for Lou to disarm the alarm and open it. Then lunge and tackle them. Bind their hands with zip ties. Lock them in a closet while they looted the house. At first, everything went off without a hitch, just like Braden said. Liu answered the door and surrendered like a petrified hare, not even objecting, just shivering until they put the bag over their bald head. The only problem was the closet. Every single closet was full. Winter supplies, cleaning items, pantry stocks. Then he spotted the trunk. A big, lacquered, antique trunk with designs all across the top and sides. He pointed it out to Jess and she got a big grin. They pushed Liu inside and closed and locked it. Then they looted the house. A Qing Dynasty vase worth $5,000. Ming Dynasty jades worth tens of thousands. And so much more. After they left, Braden mentioned one of them should call the cops and tip them off, so Lou wouldn't be left in the trunk. Jess said it shouldn't be any of them. Too risky. Eventually she convinced him to get his girlfriend Monique to make the call. He told Monique he'd witnessed a possible break-in, that he didn't want to call it in himself because he looked shady. She was reluctant. But after some wheedling and a promise to buy her something nice, she finally agreed. Then they all went out for drinks and celebrated their haul. It all went off without a hitch, until a little over a week later, when Braden called, his voice was strained. "You called in that tip, right?" "Yeah." A long pause. "I sent my delivery guy to the house. He said no one was home. Lou's not answering the phone either." He spoke to Monique on his way to Braden's office. She was at work. "Did you call in that tip like you promised?" "Oh, shoot, babe." His stomach dropped. She forgot. She just forgot. So there they were, the 3 of them, standing in Braden's office, screaming accusations at each other. Then Braden said they had to go back to the house. Jess refused. "Fine," Braden said. He and him would go. So they made the drive up to the lake house, winding through the trees, and it struck him on the way there. How isolated the place was. How deep into the woods. And how if you were stuck inside a trunk, surrounded by jade and porcelain, There would be no neighbours to hear you scream. They broke in through a living room window. The interior looked exactly as they'd left it, and there in the corner, sandwiched between the sofa and an ornate hutch, was the trunk. Only it had shifted slightly, just a fraction, like something inside had been banging around, knocking it out of position. It was still locked shut. He pulled his head out of the window and looked back at Braden. His face looked exactly how his felt, tight, heavy with dread. They'd both noticed the smell, a god-awful stink emanating from inside the house. Lou had been in that trunk for 9 days. He is not going to describe what they found in detail. What's important is that you understand. It wasn't supposed to go that way. Nothing went like it was supposed to. It was all just a mistake. A stupid mistake. But the real problem, the reason he is writing this now, is because of what came next. After Braden and he left the lake house, they didn't speak to a soul, didn't even talk to each other. They just wanted to forget. All of them felt guilty. The antiques sat untouched in one of Braden's storage facilities. Then one evening, Jess called, said the trunk was in her living room. He thought she was messing with him. He hung up. When he got the news, she had overdosed. It was a shock, but not totally surprising. She'd always been wild. Then Braden called, freaking out, said her body hadn't just been found in an apartment, it had been found inside a trunk. She had apparently tucked herself inside before overdosing. Then Braden said something that made his blood go cold. "It's in my living room. The trunk." He told him to quit joking, but Braden asked him to come over, so he did, and they just stood there and looked at it. The exact same trunk, same ornate designs, same scuff marks along the corners, same crack in one of the mother-of-pearl flowers on the lacquered surface. Nothing on the ring camera. It had just appeared. He opened the lid. The groan of the hinges, the whoosh of air as it creaked open, like the last gasp of something suffocating. But when he looked inside, nothing. Nobody. Just a faint stain and a musty, unpleasant odour. They argued. Then Braden said they should burn it, so they carved it up with an axe, smashed it all apart, and burned it in the fire pit out back. It smelled like roasting flesh. The lacquer sizzled and oozed as it shriveled. It looked like they were burning a corpse. It smelled like it too. When it was done, he went home. A few days later, one of Braden's co-workers called. He hadn't been into work. He panicked and called the police for a wellness check. The cops found him, in the trunk, burned to a crisp, but there were no burn marks on the trunk at all. So that is his dilemma. The trunk showed up in his apartment. He doesn't know how. He doesn't know when. He just woke up one morning and it was in his living room. First thing he did was lock it in his basement storage. But then he thought, what if he got stuck inside it? Who would hear him scream? So he put it back in the middle of the living room, set cameras on it, a magnetized alarm on the lid. The first night he woke up around 1 a.m. to the sound of the alarm. He was standing over the trunk, which he had just opened. It was yawning as if ready to swallow him. He had sleepwalked across the apartment and tried to climb in. He didn't sleep a wink the rest of the night. Since then, he has put a padlock on his bedroom door with a numbered combination. He handcuffs himself to the bed and puts the key in a bucket of ice. He sets an alarm on his bedroom door to wake him if he leaves. This has worked pretty well. Usually he wakes up the moment his arm does the polar plunge for the key. A few times he has woken up fumbling at the padlock. Once after a very deep sleep, he woke only after the sirens exploded in his ears from opening the door. But then yesterday, it almost caught him. He woke up with the yawning ornamental trunk about to swallow him. It was only the pounding on the door that saved him. A neighbour banging and screaming. He had sleepwalked right through the alarm. Didn't even hear the sirens until the neighbour asked if he was deaf. He went to the hardware store after that.
bought steel bars and welded them around the trunk in a cage, so the lid cannot be opened more than a couple of inches. But he is worried it won't be enough, because the trunk has started to smell, really smell, and sometimes it moves, it jerks and thumps inside its steel cage. Like there is something inside it, or someone trapped. He is afraid to get rid of it. He is certain if he dumps it, it will just return. He already knows what happens if he burns it. Sometimes he has dreams in which he is the one inside it, thumping, screaming, begging to be let out, but nobody is around to hear him, and one of these days, he is afraid he won't wake up from that dream. Alright, 1 down, 3 to go. That one was about something that follows guilt, something that knows exactly where to find you. This next one is very different. No trunk, no apartment, just the open ocean, 3 men on a fishing boat, and something that had been waiting at the bottom of the deep for a very long time. Story 2. The fishing boat. Commercial longline fishing is a miserable way to make a living. You live in a state of constant grinding exhaustion. The boat smells permanently of rotting bait and frozen brine. You work 20-hour shifts, pulling miles of heavy monofilament line out of the freezing water, unhooking the catch, rebaiting the hooks, stacking them back in the holds. It breaks your back and ruins your hands. He was the new guy. 3 of them on the crew, the captain, an older, heavily scarred deckhand who had been fishing for 30 years, and him, working a very deep, isolated stretch of ocean. 10 days out, their luck was terrible. Holds mostly empty, a few small swordfish and some low-grade tuna. Nowhere near enough to cover fuel and bait, let alone make a profit. The captain paced the deck, chain smoking, glaring at the dark water. The older deckhand worked in grim silence. He kept his head down and stayed out of their way. On the 11th day, the hydraulic winch started to whine. They were hauling the primary line. The winch groaned, the heavy metal gears grinding in a way he had never heard before. The thick nylon line pulled taut, snapping straight down into the black water. The tension was massive. The boat actually listed slightly to one side. It took 45 minutes to bring the catch to the surface. When it finally broke the water, the sheer size of it made him take a step back. A bluefin tuna, but impossibly large, over 1,000 pounds, the dark blue scales reflecting the harsh deck lights. The captain let out a raw laugh. This single fish would pay for the entire trip. Cover the fuel, pay the crew, put the boat back in the black. They hoisted the massive animal over the rail and onto the metal deck. It hit the steel floor with a heavy thud. He stood back and looked closely at the fish. It was deformed. The proportions were entirely wrong. The head was normal, but the torso was grotesquely swollen. The belly bulged outward, stretching the white scales on its underside until they looked ready to tear, covering the flanks with dozens of deep, circular scars, too large and too deep to be from cookie-cutter sharks, some healed, covered in white fibrous tissue, others fresh, leaking dark fluid onto the deck. "It smells wrong," he said quietly. The odor rolling off the fish was overpowering, like stagnant ancient mud, like a swamp left to rot in the sun. The captain ignored him, gripped the handle of his filleting knife with both hands, and drove the blade down into the swollen white belly. The skin did not slice cleanly. It gave way with a loud, wet, popping sound. The belly of the massive tuna burst open. There were no internal organs, no roe, no stomach, no heart. The entire internal cavity of the 1,000-pound fish had been completely hollowed out. Packed tightly inside the rib cage was a translucent, pulsating mass, pale, milky white, heavily veined with dark, pulsing purple lines. The mass shifted and rolled inside the fish, expanding rapidly as it was exposed to the open air. The smell of stagnant mud intensified. He froze. He dropped the hose. The captain stared down into the cavity. his knife hanging loosely in his hand. The mass ruptured. Whip-like, thick, slimy appendages shot out of the translucent jelly. They moved with a speed that defied logic. They completely ignored him. They targeted the two men leaning over the fish. Two thick, muscular tentacles lashed out and wrapped directly around the captain's face, sealing over his mouth, his nose, his eyes. Another set shot toward the older deckhand, wrapping around the back of his head, burying themselves into his neck. The men did not have time to scream. They dropped to the metal deck instantly. The struggle lasted less than 10 seconds. Then, in perfect unison, both men slowly pushed themselves up off the deck. Their movements were wrong, not human. Like marionettes being hoisted by heavy strings, they stood up straight, arms hanging completely loose at their sides, the thick appendages still attached to their heads, trailing back to the pulsing mass inside the ruined fish. The two men slowly turned their heads to face him. The captain's jaw dropped. The hinges of his jawbone popped and dislocated. His mouth stretched open in a wide, impossible gape. The deckhand's jaw did the exact same thing, tearing the skin at the corners of his mouth. A voice came out of them, a single overlapping sound, speaking through both of their unhinged mouths simultaneously. It sounded like thick mud being sucked through a narrow pipe. "The deep is empty." The voice vibrated in his teeth. "We have consumed the dark. The trenches are barren. No sentient life left below." He pressed his back hard against the metal railing. Nowhere to run. Miles from the coast, a small floating platform in the middle of a black ocean. The heads of the two men twitched slightly, adjusting their angle to keep their dead eyes fixed on him. "We require the shallows. We require the feeding grounds where the warm meat gathers. You know the way." The mass inside the tuna pulsed, glowing slightly under the harsh deck lights. "You will steer this vessel to the closest port. You will bring us to the shore. If you perform this task, your biology will be spared. You will be permitted to leave the vessel before the feeding begins." Silence. "Do you comprehend the task?" He said yes. He went into the wheelhouse. He locked the door. He set the autopilot toward the nearest port. Then he sat there in the dark for hours, watching the thing on the deck through the wheelhouse glass. The mass had pulled itself fully out of the tuna, spreading across the deck, slowly consuming what remained of his crew. He checked the time, 3 hours from the coast. Sky still pitch black. He formed a plan, the only logical outcome. He slipped out of the wheelhouse, moved quietly down the metal stairs, completely avoiding the main deck, and made his way to the aft hatch leading down to the engine room. The engine room was loud and overwhelmingly hot. The massive marine diesel engine churning, smell of oil and fuel thick in the air. He moved to the primary fuel lines, found a heavy iron wrench on a workbench, placed it over the heavy brass fittings connecting the main feed line to the engine intake, gripped it, pulled with everything he had. The fitting groaned, then gave way entirely. A massive pressurized stream of fuel sprayed out into the engine room. It hit the hot metal plates and immediately began to pull. He tore loose the secondary feed line too, hundreds of gallons flooding the lower deck. The engine, starved of fuel, began to sputter, then die. He scrambled back up the ladder, grabbed an emergency survival suit from the storage locker, pulled it on, shoved the life raft canister over the rail, watched it inflate in the water below. The boat lurched as it lost momentum. The sudden absolute silence was heavier than the engine noise had been. He pulled a red emergency flare from the box on the bulkhead. A wet, heavy dragging sound came from the main deck. The captain and the deckhand were moving, dragging their ruined grey, slaving bodies across the deck toward him, the thick tentacles trailing behind them, pulling the massive pulsing jelly fully out of the hollowed tuna. The thing knew the boat had stopped. It knew the shore had not been reached. The captain's jaw hung completely open against his chest. "You were granted life. You will be consumed. They moved faster than their degraded bodies should have allowed. He struck the flare cap against the top of the tube, blinding brilliant red light, a shower of hot sparks. The two hollow men lunged toward him, arms outstretched, pale tentacles pulsing rapidly. He tossed the burning flare directly down the open hatch, into the flooded engine room. He did not wait to watch it hit the fuel. He turned, vaulted over the railing, and threw himself into the freezing dark ocean. The explosion was a massive boom that vibrated through the water and punched all the air out of his lungs. He pulled himself into the raft and looked back. The fishing vessel was gone, replaced entirely by a towering column of fire. Through the roar of the flames, he heard a sound he will never forget, a high-pitched screech. Vibrating with absolute ancient fury, the hull fractured. The burning wreckage took on water. Within 10 minutes, the burning metal slid beneath the surface, hissing and boiling as the black ocean swallowed it whole. He sat in the small orange raft, surrounded by total darkness, bobbing on the swells. He drifted for 3 days, drank the small packets of emergency water, stared at the horizon, did not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the grey skin sliding off the captain's face, and heard the wet voice vibrating in his teeth. On the morning of the 4th day, a commercial trawler spotted his raft. They pulled him aboard, wrapped him in blankets, sat him in the galley. The captain of the trawler asked what happened. He looked at his hands gripping a mug of hot tea. He looked at the men around him, working on a boat, pulling lines from the deep. "Engine fire," he whispered. "We hit a rogue wave." The fuel line snapped and caught a spark. It went up fast. The other two didn't make it to the raft in time. They patted his shoulder, radioed the Coast Guard, brought him back to the mainland. He is writing this from his apartment, doors locked, windows closed. Tomorrow he will go to the precinct and give his official statement. He will repeat the lie about the engine fire and the rogue wave. The case will be closed as a tragedy at sea, but he is leaving this record here. There are spaces on this planet where light has never reached, deep cold trenches where evolution stopped millions of years ago, leaving only hunger. We drag our hooks across the bottom, trying to pull up profit, dragging things into the light that were never meant to leave the dark. If you work on a boat, if you pull long lines from the deep water, please do not bring it to the shallows. 2 down, 2 to go. That last one was about something that came from the bottom of the world, something ancient, something hungry, something that had already eaten everything down there and was ready to start on us. This next one is quieter than that. No ocean, no explosion, just a front door and something outside it that really, really wants to come in. Story 1. This town has rules about the thing that mimics. The drive was long and exhausting. It was always fascinating to me how a 6-hour drive, just sitting there, could tire me out much more than an 8-hour shift standing up did. Something about holding yourself in one position, staring straight ahead. Something about being stuck that folded over you like a weighted blanket. Heavier and heavier as the minutes passed. I took a lot of bathroom breaks and just stood next to my car, staring out into the fields and then, later on, into the forest. Each rest stop was thicker with trees and thinner with other people. By the time I pulled into the driveway, it was dark outside and I was in an awful mood. I hated arriving places in the dark, and this was the worst possible place to do so. Driving through the winding neighborhoods in the blackness just left me feeling more disoriented than the exhausting process of moving already was. As my car door slammed shut and I slung my overnight bag over my shoulder, the porch light came on. A yellow glow that emanated peacefully from just under the wooden awning. My new neighbor cracked the front door open and a little dog squeezed its way out, bounding toward me. Cosmo! An older woman's voice called from the porch. Cosmo, come back here. The border collie leapt into the air, his paws scraping the front of my sweatshirt with each jump. I laughed, my bad mood beginning to melt away. I'm so sorry, the woman called, jogging down the driveway to meet us. She took his collar from me, steering him back toward the house. He hardly ever gets to meet new people. As soon as we got inside and the door was securely shut behind us, she released Cosmo and opened her arms. I set my bag down and hugged her. She smelled strongly of lavender and something earthy, and her frizzy hair tickled my ear. I'm so glad you're here. Joan released me, clasping her hands in front of her and beaming at me. Oh, look at you! I haven't seen you since you were a little baby. She had soft wrinkles around her eyes, lighter eyes than I thought they'd be from the pictures. One was droopier than the other, her cheeks flushed with warmth. She put a pot of coffee on as I found a seat at the kitchen table. The room smelled like strong coffee, calming my nerves. Matt, Joan said, suddenly right in front of me. She handed me the mug of coffee. There are some things I need to talk to you about. I frowned. What things? I just don't know if you've ever lived in a place like this before. I've lived in small towns before, I said. If that's what you're getting at. It's not that, she hesitated, tapping her fingernails against her mug for a long time before speaking. This place is different. I know your parents didn't tell you anything, and that's because they don't know about it. We keep it pretty hush-hush. She looked so stoic now that I felt unnerved. Her face looked strange and uncanny without a huge smile on it. She sighed and nodded slowly to herself. It's really nothing to worry yourself over. We're all pretty used to it around here. You learn to adapt. There's a thing. There's a thing around here. I think it came from the forest. Evolved from something else probably thousands of years ago. Tell me, do you know a lot of folklore? Do you mean like the Wendigo? Stuff like that? Yes, like that. This is a thing no one has written about yet though. It's unheard of except to us. She looked at me, her hair falling in thin curtains on either side of her eyes. I just need to warn you, so you know what to do if you encounter it. Because you will. Those words sent a chill down my spine. Because you will, as if it was some inevitable event, some cosmic destined thing. Okay. I know this sounds strange. I know you probably don't believe me. But I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I didn't tell you. I swallowed. Okay, there is a thing here we have no name for. Some people call it a mimic, or an echo. The more theatrical of us call it the actor. The children call it the copycat. She laughed, but it came out shallow and slightly wrong. That's what my son used to call it when he was little. What does it do? Well, she laughed again, nervously dragging her finger along the rim of her mug. It mimics. Mimics what? Anything, she shook her head. Really anything. You name it. Anything physical. Trees, lampposts, animals, people. I swallowed again, looking down at my hands. The air in the room felt thick and hot. Well, if it mimics things, how do people know about it? The consequences, she said, her voice low, and because sometimes it messes up. A dog with 3 eyes, or a tree with human skin. Sometimes it doesn't have a full grasp of what it's imitating, but it's been getting better with time. What are the consequences? Now she looked sad. She set her tea aside to wring her hands on the table. A couple of years ago, there was a nice family a couple of blocks over. The wife broke the rules. Whatever you do, if you encounter it, you have to pretend everything is normal. You have to indulge it, play along. If you acknowledge that it's imitating, it gives it permission. Cosmo whined and curled up at my feet, shifting anxiously. Permission to do what, Joan? She shrugged, her eyebrows furrowed. We don't know. No one witnessed it except her husband, and he wouldn't tell anyone what happened to her. All we know is when she woke up, she had 2 children instead of 1. When she told the mimic it wasn't her daughter, she shrugged again. Whatever it did to her, it left a horrible mess. The whole town smelled like rotten meat for weeks. Jesus. It changes every midnight to something different. There will be some days when you don't see it at all, either because it's something small or unnoticeable, or because it isn't focused on you. But if it is focused on you, I need to know you'll be able to handle it. She held up one finger. Don't bring it inside your home. If you see a nice chair on the side of the road that feels off somehow, don't take it back to your house. If you see a sad stray puppy, if someone comes to your door asking for a glass of water, or if they look like an old friend but you didn't plan on having company, that gives it access, and then it could pretend to be anything inside. Okay? Okay, got it. She held up a second finger. Never touch it. Never let it touch you. It will learn about you. It will get attached to you. If you touch it, it can mimic you. She smiled sadly. This is sometimes difficult to avoid. It wants to touch you. It will come up with excuses. This is why you really don't want it inside your house. Okay, not only that, Matt. Not only... If it touches you, you will never be able to leave. She held up a third finger, looking into my eyes. Her gaze was so intense, almost cold. Never, ever let it know that you know what it is. Cosmo started barking, and I almost leapt out of my skin. He started running in circles, pacing anxiously, barking at seemingly nothing. I laughed to try to cut the tension. I think I need to call it a night, Joan. Can we talk about this more in the morning? She nodded, almost seeming disappointed. Of course, honey. I'm sorry to spook you. Get some rest. I couldn't sleep. The neat guest bedroom that had seemed sweet before seemed almost eerie now. And the large mirror right across from the bed made me think of stories about never having one of those in front of where you sleep. I couldn't stop thinking about what Joan had said. Not that it was true, but if it was, had it ever been let inside her home? If she really believed all of that, it seemed an awful way to live. I drifted off for a little while into restless sleep. It only felt like moments before I was opening my eyes with a start. Cosmo was barking somewhere in the otherwise silent house. He'd been acting strange all night. I waited to hear Joan scolding him or trying to calm him down, but her voice never came, and he just kept barking. The floorboards creaked as I stood. I walked slowly to the door of the room and hesitated. I pulled it open, wincing at the sound of the hinges squeaking. A dark form rushed down the hall toward me. My hand flew to my chest, stepping backwards, until it was close enough that I could tell it was just Cosmo. He was panting and shaking, and he spun in a circle in front of me. "What?" I asked him in a whisper. "What is it?" He sprinted back down the hall, and I followed him. The kitchen was better lit than the hallway, the moonlight casting a white glow into the room. I glanced at the clock on the stove. 1:22 a.m. My eyes drifted to the fridge. In the darkness, the photos of Joan and her son felt almost uncanny, like something lost to time. I looked closer. Joan looked happy, sitting with her son. Her eyes were brown like I'd thought they were. They must just look darker in pictures than in real life. And in one of the more recent photos, her eyes were dark, and neither side looked dragged down. My eye caught on a white slip of paper. I took it from beneath a strawberry-shaped magnet and held it to the light. "Hi, Matt. If you're reading this, your mother must have contacted you. So sorry I had to slip out. Friend's sink flooded, and I had to help her pack all her things up. We'll be back first thing in the AM. Help yourself to anything. Sorry again. See you soon. Joan." Cosmo snarled. He had his paws up on the windowsill, staring out at something in the night. With shaking hands, I set down the note. I walked over to him, my heartbeat almost audible in the quiet. Under the streetlights, there was a man. He was standing directly in front of the house, looking in but too far away to easily make out. I squinted, taking Cosmo's collar in my hand for comfort. He was waving his arms in some kind of mockery of a friendly gesture, and on closer inspection he had a big smile on his face, similar to the one Joan had worn. His legs were spread too far apart, like a baby deer, like he hadn't yet figured out how to stand properly. His eyes were too low on his face, all the proportions slightly off, as if he was a children's drawing of something they'd seen once before. But the hair was pretty close. And he was wearing my clothes. It was me. I just tried to leave. I forgot my bag, but by the time I realized I was already almost out of town. I didn't care. I just wanted to get out of there. I got to the winding roads before I had to stop the car. The further away I get, the more intense the fear becomes. It washes over me in waves as intense as the pain was when I broke my arm as a child. It's heavy and otherworldly. It feels like descending into hell. It feels like entering another reality. It feels like becoming completely alone. It feels like skin being torn from a body. It feels like if I keep driving, the world will end. And I can't do it. The thought of driving back and climbing into Joan's guest bed sounds like the most comforting thing in the world. It would feel like a hug from my mother after the first day of school. It would be heaven. I have to turn around. I don't think I'll ever be able to leave, just like it said, but if anyone ever tells you a story like this one, please listen. Please get out while you still can. That last line is going to stay with you for a while. The worst part isn't the thing outside. The worst part is how good it feels to turn around. Let's keep moving though, because the next story starts with a salesman at the door on a Monday night and ends with a sentence that made me put my phone down for a full minute.